and get going.
Welcome, everybody, to our first in a series of Zoom discussions focused on the issues that could evolve into bills for the 2023 legislative session. Tonight's topic is certainly germane as we will focus on gun violence prevention. I'm Paul Gibson, co-founder of Retake Our Democracy, and with me is the other co-founder.
Hi, I'm Roxanne. Most of you know who I am.
So I just wanted to let you know that our next Zoom will focus on modernizing the legislature. And modernizing doesn't mean sprucing up the roundhouse with a new coat of paint, but rather reforming the legislative process and bringing it into the 21st century. To find out precisely what modernization could entail and how we achieve it, we've assembled a great panel, including Representatives Angelica Rubio and Cristina Ortiz, and activist Rick Ann Bach of Indivisible Santa Fe, and Kara Lynch, the co-founder of Legislative Momentum, who is the person who's been working with 10 Democratic women House reps who have been working all spring and summer on developing this legislation. And
right.
What's the date of the next meeting?
It's 2 weeks from tonight. So it's July 27th, same time, 6 p.m. And we've sent a couple of notes out. You can find the link to register if you go to our website, retakeourdemocracy.org, and go to actions and events. And if you just scroll down past tonight's event, it's just below that. You can register there. And I just want to say that it's not just about paying legislators. It's about getting them paid staff. It's about longer sessions. And we're going to hear all about that in 2 weeks from tonight.
Right. And so with us tonight for our discussion about gun violence prevention are Miranda Viscoli, the co-president of New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence, and Janae Martinez, a gun violence prevention student activist.
From Albuquerque?
From?
Where are you from, Janae?
Janae?
I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay, great. We'll give you both a chance to introduce yourselves too.
Yeah, for the first hour, or why don't you outline this, Roxanne?
Okay, so we're going to do this the way we typically do when we have guests, and that is for the first hour, Paul and I will ask a series of questions, and then we'll open it up to your questions. Do you want to just use hand raising? We're not doing Q&A because we didn't set it up as a webinar.
Okay.
So when the time comes, we'll just ask you to use the raise hand function, and we'll try to take you in the order that your hands are raised. And please try to keep your questions concise and to the point. We would appreciate that, so more people have a chance to ask questions.
I was going to also note that while most of you saw today's blog, if you didn't, we were officially approved by the IRS as a 501c3 on Friday.
Well, Retake is already...
Retake is a 501c4. Now Rethink is a 501c3. And we'll be writing a little bit more about that in future blogs.
Yeah, and a lot of organizations do this. They use their 501c4 to do advocacy work, election work, and then they have a 501c3 that they use mostly as an educational organization. And that's what we're going to be doing. And that will enable us to get foundation grants. And so we are hoping it could really take off, and we set things up so that Paul and I can retire when we want to.
And it would continue. That's the main impetus for this.
Right.
In any case, let's get started. Let's start with you, Miranda. I always like to let our guests introduce themselves. So how about if you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with gun violence prevention generally, and specifically with gun violence prevention for New Mexico?
And you're muted.
Myself to help. So yeah, I'm Miranda with New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence. We're a group of concerned citizens and residents of New Mexico working on the issue of gun violence prevention. I got involved way back in 2013, concerned about the trajectory of gun violence in both our state and our country. I was actually researching Mexican modernism. I knew nothing about the NRA. I was getting a PhD at UNM, but I put down that research and I started researching the NRA and the NRA gun lobby and what was going on in our country. And it was just one of those life-changing moments where you realize you have to roll up your sleeves and get to work and do something. And so it's not just me, this organization. People see my face a lot, but there are many of us at New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence working really hard on this issue. We take a multi-pronged approach to the multifaceted problem, which a lot of our work is with youth, which was where I met the amazing Janae. And I'm so excited that we can have her here today. She is a force to be reckoned with, and our world's going to be in a good place because of our youth like Janae getting us to where we need. She's a wise person. So
We'll give you a chance to talk more about what gun violence to prevent gun. New Mexicans to prevent gun violence. I always get it wrong. It's gun violence prevention. Is it New Mexicans to prevent gun violence?
Yes.
Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence, yes.
All right. But first, we want to let Janae introduce herself, the rock star. Janae, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in student advocacy generally and in gun violence prevention advocacy specifically?
Of course. And if at any point that you cannot hear me clearly, just tell me and I'll fix it. So I got involved in gun violence prevention as part of my own passion in the topic, with it being a serious issue in my community. I started educating myself about it around 2017 when a shooting had just happened in the area. I started expressing my interest in activism with my school. I was starting off with small projects, such as writing infographics, presentations, and all of this eventually was leading up to me working with New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence as part of my service learning.
Are you a high school student or a college student?
I am a high school student.
Okay.
So Miranda, we're going to bounce back and forth quite a bit here, but you have 2 or 3 questions in a row here, Miranda. So get ready. Can you tell us a bit about New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence and what it does? You said multi-prong. What are those prongs?
We take what are those crazy prongs? What's that? But magic, special sauce. So basically, when we first started New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence, we had a lot of doors slammed in our face. A crazy amount of doors slammed in our face. Everybody thought we were just trying to take away their guns. At the same time, as I said, we were doing research on where is gun violence happening in our state. Urban gun violence obviously is very different from rural gun violence. Youth gun violence is very different from gun violence that's happening with our elder communities. So really looking at what programs can we start to, one, begin a conversation, right? Nobody wanted to have a conversation about it. And two, to start creating spaces where we could create change. So a lot of the work we do is with youth. So one of our biggest programs is the Student Pledge Against Gun Violence, where we worked with youth all over New Mexico on basically at the school, the students plan an event and on gun violence prevention. And then on that day, every student has an opportunity to sign the Student Pledge Against Gun Violence. We did not create this program. This is a national program created by actually now a dear friend of mine, Mary Louise Groh. What's interesting about the Student Pledge, though, is that when we were doing it consistently in Santa Fe and up through Espanola and past up throughout all of northern New Mexico, there was a 54% reduction in all those years while we were doing it of students bringing weapons to school. And we can't, prove that's because of us, but nobody else was talking to them about it. Then COVID happened, so we're going to start up again this coming fall. While we continued to do that work, we realized working with youth that they really needed a voice and a space to have a voice and an empathetic voice, a non-judgmental voice, a place where they could just talk about what they were feeling. And art seemed to be the way to the direction that we were going in. So then we started a program called Murals to End Gun Violence. We have done now 13 youth-driven gun violence prevention murals. They're facilitated by Warren Montoya from Resonate Art. In fact, at Janae's school at South Valley Academy, we have one. And it's been a really important curriculum, art experience, and experience that celebrates activism on gun violence prevention with our youth. And it's lasting. So those schools have those murals constantly with a message about gun violence prevention. But then we also started looking at the fact that there's way too many frickin' guns in this state and nobody knows what to do with them. So we created a program called Guns to Gardens. Guns to Gardens just went national. So we just did our first national gun buyback July 11th. There were 20 other cities doing Guns to Gardens buyback. So we now have all banded together. Our specific first national gun buyback was in Albuquerque on June 11th, where we took in 240 guns. There were many semi-automatic handguns, a machine gun, sawed-off shotguns, AR-15s, and a lot of, let's just say, illegal guns. It was the most we've ever taken in. That was actually our 14th Guns to Gardens buyback. It's called Guns to Gardens because we dismantle the guns on site, and then I literally drive them up to Colorado and to raw tools, and they forge them into gardening tools. But it's also, what we like about it is yes, it gives people an opportunity to get rid of those unwanted guns. And our anonymous survey shows that the majority of people are doing this for safety reasons. But the press always shows up, and they're not allowed to take pictures of the people because it's anonymous. So we send them over to the chop saw. And then so in every single living room that watches the local news, you're seeing piles of guns being chopped up. And we're not anti-gun, but what it shows is that maybe we don't need this many guns in our community. So it does several things, and it also creates a space for conversation. So that's another program we do. We do a lot of PSA, a lot of gun safety, hand out thousands of free gun locks, bilingual gun safety legislation. Today tell me if I'm talking too fast. Today we just finished the recording of a PSA that will go throughout all of New Mexico to get parents to lock up their guns. We have hired John Acosta and an amazing young filmmaker, Dylan Hoffman, to create a 10-minute short that's going to be played in schools on the issue of gun violence, but also it's a positive message. It's not the horrible dare to keep kids off drugs. It's look how we can have a positive impact on our community. He's a very, very talented filmmaker. So that comes out in August. And then we also do training. So when we passed the extremist protection order 2 years ago, what we saw is that the guns weren't coming in and that law enforcement was not enforcing the law. But we realized part of that was due to training. So we got foundation money to hire an amazing woman named Sheila Lewis, who is our trainer. And she's training law enforcement, domestic violence advocates, folks working in mental health and schools to do trainings throughout New Mexico on how to use the extremist protection order to get those guns out of unsafe hands. Highland Park was a perfect example of that. And then, of course, legislation. So, so far we've passed a background check bill, an extremist protection order bill, and a bill to get guns out of the hands of domestic violence offenders under protective orders.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about what might be in store for us in 2023 in just a few minutes. But first, I'd like you to try and frame the discussion for today. Within the current political environment on a national level, do you feel there has been a meaningful shift in the gun violence discussion after the recent surge in mass shootings? And what is your view of what Congress got done?
I think it's amazing. And I know everybody thinks that it was too small. That wasn't too small. That was huge. And I know everybody's like, but we have to do so much more. In gun violence, us that are working in gun violence prevention, we know that it's baby steps. And, the fact that they basically passed the law we passed, but now on the federal level on getting guns out of the hands of domestic violence offenders, of strengthening up our straw purchasing laws so ATF can stop all the guns that are going to the cartel, of getting money for training for extremist protection orders. I know it's not enough, but the fact that it's a bipartisan bill is huge. And so we were really, really happy to see it get passed.
Sorry, I had to unmute us. Yeah. Good. Well, that's good to hear, because I think a lot of us, when we listen to the news, we go, oh, they should have done so much more. This is all watered down and so on and so forth. So I guess we should just be happy that they did something, right? So one more question for you, Miranda, before we go to a question for Janae. So the recent action on gun violence was the result basically of a reaction to the mass shootings. But as you very well know, and as horrific as those shootings are, they really represent a relatively small number of the actual gun deaths in our country. So how do most gun violence deaths occur? And is there any kind of legislation that might meaningfully respond to that?
No, that's a good question. So yes, obviously the mass shootings they're a small fraction. Unfortunately, what they do, and maybe Janae will want to speak to this, especially in terms of our youth at schools having to do with lockdowns, is they put us all in a constant state of fear. I don't think any of us, if a book falls in a library, everybody jumps, right? So it has changed our psyche collectively, I do think. But it's a very good point. No, those are not the majority. So for instance, in New Mexico, 63% of our deaths are suicide with a firearm. And so I think that's why one of the reasons why New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence work so hard to pass that extremist protection order law and are now doing the trainings, because that is really geared at getting those guns out of unsafe hands. When somebody's mentally unstable, it's not the right time to have a firearm. But you don't want to punish them. You don't want anything to go on their record. You don't want them to do something unfortunate, maybe hurt themselves and their family. So you want to get that gun out of the situation. So suicide is a huge issue. We know from our gun buybacks where people will just tell us, my son has suicidal ideation and I don't know what to do with this gun. If I sell it, it can get in unsafe hands. Especially with our youth. It's one of the reasons why we're working on a child access prevention bill with Representative Pamela Herndon, is making sure the parents are locking up those guns and the ammunition is stored separately. That's half of our child, and I should have done a trigger alert. I'm sorry, because we're talking about suicide, so I apologize for not doing that. So I do want to, if you need to mute or turn me off, do. But half of our gun deaths with children in New Mexico are suicide. The other are homicide, a couple of accidents. But then when it goes to adults, it's 63%. So that's definitely an issue. And then there's also the issue of when you live in a state with housing insecurity, food insecurity, drug addiction, very little help with mental health or drug addiction, and an insane amount of guns. We have more guns in this state than most states. You're going to have a lot of gun violence because it's a systemic problem, right? And we really need to figure out, how do we help people, especially our youth, when they have a backpack full of aces and access to firearms, not pick up that firearm.
So just a quick follow-up question. So what do you say to the gun owner who says, I can't lock my gun in a safe and keep my ammunition in a separate spot. I have my gun for protection and I have to have it loaded and, in my nightstand at night?
My response, and I'm not going to swear, is well, one, if you have the money to buy that semi-automatic handgun, you have the money to buy a biometric gun safe, which costs $120, and they're voice activated, fingerprint activated. You can have your loaded semi-automatic handgun at your fingertips from your bedside. It's probably quicker than opening up your drawer, right? I mean, so it's a ridiculous point. And how many times is somebody coming into a home and actually defending? I mean, what's his name? Locke has skewed his numbers greatly. It doesn't happen as much as people being gunned down in the street.
Isn't it far more often that the person that has that gun in their nightstand is going to use it on their wife or child who's wandering around the house?
For themselves.
Yeah, and if women who keep a gun for protection, they have a 500 higher chance of being shot and killed by that firearm than being saved by it. And that's the sad fact.
It's very sad.
Let me move on.
Okay,
Janae.
let's get to Janae.
Janae, are you still there, Janae? We've got
Yes,
three in a
I
row
am still
for
here.
you. We got three in a row for you. The first is, what would a meaningful governmental response look like to gun violence in America? Of course, you want to see gun violence prevention legislation, but what about your schoolmates? Do most students support gun violence prevention efforts? And is there any visible evidence of students who oppose that kind of work?
So to me, a meaningful governmental response to gun violence would look like having mandatory gun training, written tests, background checks, mental health evaluation for those who want to buy a gun. And then along with that, ensuring that after the person obtains the gun, it is registered with the included information of where their gun is stored and how it's being stored. And while that focus is on gun control, there's also another important aspect to pay attention to, which is our community, giving our community the education on gun safety education, giving them access to gun locks and any other information that will benefit our community and being safe from guns. So when it comes to my schoolmates and other students in general, majority, if not all students, support gun violence prevention efforts. A lot of these students have seen or been affected by gun violence, and they're aware of the harm it causes, and they want a change to be made about it. I have not seen any visible evidence of students who oppose this kind of work, though.
Okay, that's good. So how do you feel, Janae, about the suggestion of arming teachers to make schools safer?
So teachers are educators, they're leaders, they're advisors. So while they may be seen as protectors by their students, they are not trained professionals in handling gun violence. Our own police officers have shown that they are not professionals either in handling these situations. So how can we place that responsibility on teachers? Armed teachers cannot be expected in a state of shock, panic, fear to act accordingly to handle a situation the same way police officers are expected to. The assumption that a teacher will be able to correctly use a gun in that situation isn't a safe one to be made, especially when dealing with the livelihoods of others. Along with just the risk that will always come with having a gun in an environment like a school. It's common for things to be misplaced, to be distracted and to lose sight of an object, or even to forget to lock things up. With items like papers or books, these are normal encounters. They're nothing more than an annoyance, but with the gun, misplacing or forgetting to lock it up can be life-threatening. With all of that said, I do not believe that arming teachers is the solution to gun violence at schools.
Okay, thank you. Now I see some of you are posting questions in the chat. I think what we're going to do is just get through the questions that we have for Miranda and Janae, and then we'll get to your questions. We'll go back and we'll try to pull those up out of the chat, but we'll also encourage you to use the raise hand function if you want to ask a question directly, and that'll be around 7 o'clock.
So Janae, what kind of gun violence prevention programming is offered at your school? And do you also do lockdowns and things like that?
Drills. You mean?
Drills. And how does that make you feel when you're doing drills?
Do you feel like it makes the school safer doing those drills?
So New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence is the only program I've seen or heard of being offered to schools in New Mexico. And schools in New Mexico are required to do 8 drills per school year, 2 of those having to be lockdowns in case of an active shooter. And I'd like to note that each school does their drills differently. There's not an exact rule on how to do it, but the main 2 ways are some show videos on run, hide, and fight, which goes over strategies for when you're in that situation. It's pretty straightforward. It's run, hide, and fight. This is more of a discussion-based drill. It has the students watching the videos. There is discussion. They talk about it. They go over what to do more directly. The other one is a stimulation drill. And this is where schools are just practicing going into lockdown, having the students hide in the classroom while someone goes around to each classroom checking the knob to make sure the doors are locked. So these are the main 2 ways they get taught, especially in New Mexico. I am personally more familiar with the stimulation one of practicing going into lockdowns. And for me, this method does not make me feel any safe. And I know a lot of students also feel the same way. These drills, especially for younger students, can be very scary and can cause a lot of anxiety. And since there is no open discussion on what to do or overall just about the situation, students are just being thrown into drills, scared, terrified, which is not an effective method at all.
You're making me remember when a lot of us were kids, we did drills for in case there was a nuclear bomb dropped. So you crouch down under your desk, face down, crouched up, and put your hands over your neck as if that's going to protect you from a nuclear bomb. Yeah. So, okay. Is it my turn to ask a question? Yeah. Let's, Miranda, we're going to go back to you if you're ready for us.
Oh, here she comes.
I'm plugging in my computer.
Okay.
My charger. Anyway, go ahead. I can talk and do that.
Yeah. So we know you've been working with Senator Bill O'Neill on legislation for the 2023 session. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, actually, we're working on two different bills. So should I go through all the bills right now that we're working on?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. The one that we're the one that we're putting probably actually most of the energy in is probably the unsexiest one. It's the Office of Gun Violence Prevention and Intervention. And like I said at the beginning, when we first started this, we're very research based, researching what's actually going to be on the prevention side, and also we want to be on the not incarcerating side. So while I celebrate what the governor has done with gun violence prevention, I was not happy with that crime bill. We did not support that crime bill. What she did in that crime bill was put a lot of young men of color in jail longer. It was a horrible bill. I'm hoping that the Office of Gun Violence, I'm going to put you on mute if my dogs start doing their crazy howling. I have 5 dogs. I wouldn't recommend that. So what we want to see again is prevention. Like, how do we prevent people from picking up a gun and then doing something unfortunate with it and then ending up in jail with the rest of their lives and somebody's dead, right? And so the Office of Gun Violence Prevention would be a way for us to, under one umbrella, put everything that is needed in terms of prevention. So for instance, it would include violence intervention programs. So for instance, there's a violence intervention program in Albuquerque, and that's where credible messengers and those with lived experience go out into the community and try to help those folks who are going down a path of guns and drugs and groups or gangs, whatever you want to call them, and helping them get an honorable exit, getting them into the systems they need, be it jobs, food, housing, so they don't have to go down that path. So that's one thing that it would do. It would also be a great place for data collection. In terms of suicide prevention, we could also create the Means Matter program and the Gun Shop Project, which is where you train gun shop owners on the signs of suicidal ideation so they know not to sell that gun. Other states are doing this. It would also, what Janae brought up, it would put funding for people who feel it's necessary for them to buy a gun, but they're not going to pay for the gun safety class. Maybe if we said, we'll pay for that class so that we really teach people to be safe with their firearms, would go a long way. A lot with educating parents on locking up guns, collecting data and research. So that's the quick, it's actually a 10-page long document of what we wanted to do, but that's my elevator speech for it. And so that would be the reason why we want an office, is then we can have a reoccurring fund. So for instance, this last session, we actually got $9 million for violence intervention programs. But the problem with that, it is not reoccurring. And so cities can't really set up a violence intervention program if the funding's only going to last for 18 months, right? You can't hire the people, you can't set it up. So we have to have reoccurring funding. Day Hockman Vigil is our sponsor for that. We're trying for Mimi Stewart in the Senate, so fingers crossed. And our first committee hearing will be on July 26th. We're partnering with the John Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions, that we actually are flying in one of their policy experts to be our expert witness, as well as Dr. Miskinnis, who's a UNM trauma surgeon, who sees it. He sees what happens every single day of his shift with gun violence. The reason why we're asking for a $20 million reoccurring fund, we'll probably get $2 million, but we put in $20 million every single year into DWI reduction. And that's good. Numbers are actually going down. They're not going down with alcohol-related deaths because people are just over drinking at home, which was happening anyway. Now it's off the charts with COVID. But in terms of vehicular homicide that involves alcohol, they're down. We don't, 3 times as many people in the state of New Mexico are shot and killed every year. And we put next to nothing on gun violence prevention. Yet it's costing our state $1.8 billion with a B dollars a year.
Did you meet 3 times as many people who are as killed in DUIs incidents?
3 times as many people are shot and killed than are killed in DWI incidents. So
Then
it's 3 times as many.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. I don't know. Did I say it wrong? I don't know.
No, I was just wanted to clarify.
No, that's good. So if you just, if we're not going to do it for the right reasons, because it's just really hurting our state and country, we should do it because it's fiscally responsible. $1.8 billion a year. The majority of our young folks that end up getting shot when they're 18 are on Medicaid. So they're in a wheelchair. They can't work the rest of their lives. Quality of life, often substance abuse follows. And so if you think about, think of incarceration, think of hospital visits, right? So and when you have this much gun violence in the state like we have in New Mexico, that adds up. So that's what we're really pushing for. It's a hard push. Everybody's going, we don't need an office. Nothing's going to happen. And I just really hope that you guys who are, very good at getting the word out on legislation, I'll send all the information that we have of what we want to these wonderful folks. And we would love to have you guys make calls and get some support out there. The other law we're trying to pass, and that is with Senator Bill O'Neill, when a person turns 18 in New Mexico, they can buy a rifle. We're actually really not that concerned about that. We're a hunting state. There are a lot of kids who go hunting. That's really not that big of a deal. If you're 20, if you want to buy a semi-automatic handgun, you have to be 21. But under that definition of rifle doesn't include an AR-15 or a semi-automatic rifle or an AK-47, although I think that you actually have to get, you have to register. I have to actually look that up. I should know that. But what it would do is raise the age for those semi-automatic rifles and those AR-15s to 21. So for instance,
I checked, you don't use an AR-15 when you go hunting.
No, we call it a meat tenderizer, but then you get a lot of lead poisoning, so you probably don't want to do it. It's actually not even a great firearm for quote unquote home protection. They shoot through wall. I mean, the whole thing's a mess. So what your basic hunting rifle can't attach a magazine to it. These 2 types of weapons can. So what we want to do, honestly, sorry, I'm going to put you on mute. Dogs are...
It's probably not a good idea to put you on mute.
Sorry, my husband just came home and the dogs are barking.
Okay.
So what this would do is at least raise that age limit. I mean, we would love to see AR-15s banned, but I don't think that's ever going to happen in my lifetime. Janae, maybe your lifetime. I don't know. So that's it there.
Okay. And would you expect much opposition from Democrats to the legislation you and Senator O'Neill and Day Hockman are working on?
And if you do, then what kind of opposition would that be, or where is it going to come from?
I will get back to you on that. There definitely will be Democratic opposition. We have some unfriendly. I mean, we lost Roger Montoya, and I think Sanchez is not friendly on much gun violence prevention legislation, nor is Munoz. So I'll let you guys know who to target. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Maybe after Uvalde, there's been a change.
Okay, go ahead, Roxanne.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think she already told us about the different kinds of bills that.
I'm just wondering the second part of that question is that with the shift in the national debate that we've discussed, why not go for a home run and seek legislation banning the sale of assault weapons in New Mexico?
For 2 reasons. So whenever we go after, whenever New Mexicans for Gun Violence is looking at passing legislation, we ask 2 questions. Because we don't have much time here, right? We only have 2 months every other year. One, would it make a difference? And two, is it possible? The assault weapon ban is a negative on both. The majority of our gun deaths in New Mexico are not with assault weapons. A 10-day hold on the sale of handguns would be better, right? So we have very little time. I don't think it would happen. So that, is it possible? I doubt it. So then we just put the very little bit of time we have into something that probably doesn't have a good chance. I could be totally wrong. Maybe there's been such a shift, but when I look at what happened in Washington with that bill, and it was a good bill, they weren't even close to an assault weapons ban. But what they were close were things that were possible. And I know that's frustrating to hear. I get it, but that's the reality. We have to be pragmatic.
So what do you think about, Miranda, the Supreme Court decision to overturn that New York legislation to limit open carry? And is that going to have any impact on what we might be able to pass here in New Mexico?
It's a problem for us right now. It's not an issue for us because we have you have to get a concealed carry permit in New Mexico. Since we started in 2013, the NRA has been trying to weaken those laws, and I don't mean to boast, but New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence has blocked them at every turn. So they've been on the defense. But what my concern is, if we get a Republican governor, which is always possible in New Mexico, that then they can get rid of our concealed carry permits. And that's disappointing because usually the folks who have concealed carry permits in New Mexico, there's only 1 or 2 cases of them committing crimes. They're actually very safe gun owners who have taken, again, going back to what Janae said, and I want to hear from Janae soon too, they took a lot of gun safety classes and they're very careful with guns. So it's ridiculous to get rid of the concealed carry permit.
We're going to skip the next question for you, Miranda, and give it back to you in a little bit, but we want to get Janae in here.
Yeah, we want to give Janae a chance to talk too.
Go ahead.
So Janae, in the past, what have New Mexico students done to advocate for gun violence prevention, and what are the kinds of, or what have you done so far? What have you been involved in? And then what do you think we're going to see with this next session? I'm guessing you're going to say you're going to be supporting New Mexicans to prevent gun violence, but tell us about what you have planned as an advocate.
So in the past, me, a lot of my friends, a lot of members of South Valley Academy, it is a social justice school, so a lot of students there do a lot of activism work. So in the past, we have done infographics, we have collected data, we have done presentations for other schools. We have gone around knocking on doors of neighborhoods, giving parents these infographics of how to keep their gun away from children. And more so recently, and it has been harder because of COVID, with this new session coming up, we are planning a lot of things. None of it is set in stone yet, but for example, we are planning to do public interviews with senators and reps, joining together with community centers to spread that information, getting local journalists in New Mexico to write more about gun violence, speaking with police officers, just to name a few things. All of this really just comes down to spreading awareness, giving education to those who need it, so that we could all be relatively on the same page when it comes to gun prevention in New Mexico.
So if I'm not mistaken, wasn't there some kind of student walkout last year? And might there be a student walkout again this year? And how would that decision be made? How would a school like yours come to the point where they went, yes, we're walking out?
So for student walkouts, our school is very open to the idea because it is a social justice school. There is a process to go through because we do want to make sure everyone's safe during a walkout. So we as in the student council will usually write a proposal of why they want to do the walkout, who's going to be participating in the walkout, what time, all the basic information that you need. And then they will announce it on the intercom of the walkout is happening now. If you want to join, you can join. And that's usually how that happens. And I would love to see that again. I'm not really sure if it will. I personally think it would, though.
So, so your school, you said, is a social justice school. Do you know of, friends or others, family who are going to other schools where that is not so welcome?
Yeah, for a lot of schools, that is not welcomed. You cannot do walkouts. You cannot do anything of that sort. It's usually due to safety, and that's the way the school is. Mine's a little different because it's a charter school and rules can be bent a little bit like that.
Yeah.
But there are other ways that students can participate in something like that very similarly. We had a school that did tons of Instagram posts. Instead of a walkout, they all posted at the exact same time positive messages in support of victims who have died to gun violence. So there's ways to get around it without exactly doing a walkout.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, that's good to know. Is there anything like the average person can do to support student advocacy, or to, whatever, talk to the school board, or do you know of anything that somebody who's maybe not a parent or doesn't have a student in school currently, or things that people can do?
Yeah, even if you are not a parent or you do not attend a school, you could always contact the student board or the school board, which most schools have public meetings that you can go to. You just have to be invited, which is really simple. You contact the school principal, which is usually on the website, and they will give you that information. You can go there and express your views. You can sign petitions, and you can do your support that way for students.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we're going to kick it back to Miranda for the wild card question. And that is, we talked about the Supreme Court as being kind of a wild card. We've got another one in the state, Mark Ronchetti. What happens if he wins as governor in terms of anything we're going to try and do in 2023?
And let's do everything we can to prevent that from happening, people. Whether or not you like Michelle Lujan Grisham, please just vote for her.
We do not need the weatherman. It'll be like what it was with, I call her Governor Martinizing, because she took our state to the cleaners. We won't get anything done, and we'll be on defense again. So we'll be blocking NRA bills. None of this will happen. Absolutely none. We've never had bipartisan support on any bill that we've passed, except for closing the gun show loophole way back when. But it was Senator Ivy Soto, if you recall, who filibustered it on the Senate floor. He's a Democrat. And then when we passed the domestic violence firearms relinquishment law, Candace Gold, I think she's from Roswell, was the only Republican that voted for it. And that was to get guns out of the hands of domestic violence offenders under a protective order, which is what we just passed on the federal level 2 weeks ago in Washington. So
just another really important example of why we need to keep a Democratic governor and keep a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate. And let's hope we can do something about that on the national level too. Yeah. That's a little scary. Okay, where are we now?
I think we have a question for both of you. What can retake advocates do this summer to support what you are all doing and to prepare for the legislative 2023 session? And what kind of messaging should we use? And is there any messaging we should avoid?
Janae, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will send you all of everything we're doing with the talking points, as well as the office and what the office would entail. And we need you guys to bug the heck out of your representatives and your senators, and the governor's office. We need emails, we need calls, we need handwritten letters. We need you to get very loud that you want this. Words not to use. I mean, people say don't use the word gun control anymore, but part of me feels like, why not? We do need to control guns, but we do have to be careful about it. I don't use the term gun safety. That's an NRA term. We used to be way back in the day when we started New Mexicans for Gun Safety. People literally thought we were the NRA. That's when we realized, oh, we need to change our name. So we say gun violence prevention. And I like that because our naysayers say gun violence doesn't exist. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. So we like to use the term gun violence prevention. That's what we chose that.
And it's
And then for the-
hard to be pro-violence, right?
Exactly. We're all about prevention. And we used to prevent rather than against because we wanted to be proactive, that we're working on prevention. Prevention is the key. So that would be, I don't think, we'll send you the talking points if you want to use those. That would be great because that keeps misinformation from happening.
Yeah.
And just help us get the word out because you guys have a wide reach.
Well, I will definitely send that to us, Miranda, because one of our strategies or approaches is we don't try to speak for organizations like you. We like to take your words and circulate them.
Yeah.
No, you guys are great about that because others aren't. You're like, oh no.
Right. And you get somebody who might think they're doing the right thing, but they're not.
Oh no, I'm the same way. If I'm for something that I am passionate about, but I don't know, I go to the source and say, what do you need? What do I say? Because I'm not an expert in that field. You can't be an expert in every field. And then also, if you're interested, come to the July 26th hearing for the office. One, to get educated, and two, for support, and three, because we have two great witnesses, expert witnesses. Dr. Miskinnis from UNM Trauma, I had him speak to the governor's staff last year, and he doesn't mince his words when it comes to gun violence. Well, this was actually a Zoom meeting because it was during COVID. He literally brought out pictures of the victims he's had at UNM and made them look. I mean, he's tough. I can't do that. I would never be allowed back in the Capitol building. He won't be showing pictures though, don't worry. And then Ari Davis, who we're flying down from the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions, is amazing on the issue. So I think
so. That's an interim committee hearing. Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's Courts, Corrections, and Justice. It's not July.
Okay.
26th.
All right. We'll send out some information about that to everybody. That hearing on the 26th, and then we'll obviously keep you all informed when we get information from Miranda as we move forward about the legislation and messaging and everything.
Janae, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah. So you can show your support by attending these events that Miranda just said, letting others know about it, and overall just joining into the conversation, taking the time to educate yourself, and then from there helping educate others. Spreading awareness is how we get heard and how changes come to be, especially when talking about gun violence. When it comes to messaging, I think it's important to notice that our priorities with the safety of communities. So I think our messaging should reflect that ideal.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. All right. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the participant.
I have one more.
Oh, Paul has one more question. Then we're going to move to
Miranda would be
participant
mad at me if I didn't ask
questions.
this question. I know New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence has a gun buyback event in with the Santa Fe Police Department coming up. Would you like to tell us about it, Miranda?
I would. Thank you very much. To be honest, I completely forgot, Paul. Thank you. We're so busy. Yeah, so, and I'll send you that flyer. You can send it out to your peeps. We are doing our 15th Guns to Gardens buyback in Santa Fe, July 23rd. What is exciting about this one is Fiesta Auto is actually helping to sponsor it. It will not be, we're trying to keep our gun buybacks away from police stations. Police will be there for safety reasons and to run the guns through NCIC, but Fiesta Auto has actually put up most of the money for this gun buyback, and it shows a community business getting behind gun violence prevention. So I will send that flyer out there. You wouldn't believe how many people you will know that have had that unwanted gun that's been sitting in a shoebox that they inherited or whatever, or bought, and this gives you a way to get rid of it. It goes from 9 to 1. Fiesta Auto is 2005 St. Michael's Drive. And then the next day, because I'm insane, we have another event on July 24th at First Presbyterian Church, where we will literally be taking those guns that we took in and forging them into gardening tools. And if anybody wants to take a hit on that forge, we will let you. It's actually pretty amazing to see. So I'll bring a few. We won't bring all of the guns. I don't know how many we'll get. To be honest, we might not get a lot. This will be our 5th gun buy back in Santa Fe. It might be a tapped out market. We don't know.
Okay.
Just FYI, I have never touched a gun in my life.
Well, I've touched 1,277 because that's how many we've taken in.
For a good
Alright.
reason, yeah. Okay, well, we're gonna go to the chat. You can either put your question in the chat or if you want to raise your hand, but I'm gonna try to go through the chat questions first. So first one from Greg Corning, do gun deaths scale with privately owned guns per capita? So if the higher the number of guns owned, the higher number of gun deaths, is that generally true?
Yes, that's 100% true.
Okay.
So we have our gun deaths go higher in states which have a lot of guns, which is us. I think we're the 4th highest for gun ownership. And those are the guns we know about, right? Because there's a lot of sheds filled with guns that we don't know about. And then also the states that have the weakest gun laws. We now, I'm proud to say, don't have the weakest gun laws, but it's going to take some time to catch up with those laws that have been passed.
Okay. And from Janet Wallet Ortiz, do you work with Moms Demand Action?
We don't. They're more of a national group, so we're more of the kind of the local group. They do great work, and we just don't work with them that much. We appreciate what they do. We just have our own way that we do stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then Christy Holden is asking about trigger biometric locks and would the requirement to have gun insurance for every gun help cut down on the number of guns?
I've wanted, who is that? Whoever you are my hero. I've been wanting to do.
On our board.
If the government won't do anything, why don't insurance companies do something? So if I have a swimming pool or a bulldog or a trampoline or a list of a lot of other things in your home, your insurance goes up. Why shouldn't it be with a gun? And what's interesting about guns, it is the only object in our country that is not regulated for safety. If you look around your room, whatever room you're in, every single thing, within reason, unless it's an antique or something, I don't know, but has been regulated for safety. We're not always good about it. A lot of it has, things are carcinogenic, but guns aren't. Which is why we're actually getting a lot of these Chinese semi-automatic handguns that are blowing up people's hands and people don't want them. We're getting in these brand new semi-automatic handguns that are gun buyback because they're reading about how they're made so cheaply that they're blowing up people's hands. So yes, I would love to do the insurance thing. I wish somebody would do that. And then what was the biometric gun safe
trigger.
That's, I don't know how that, you mean would your insurance go down? Well, your insurance doesn't even go up with if you have a gun, so I don't know.
I don't know. Did that answer your question, Christy, or did you want to? Yeah. Okay. She's nodding. Okay. Did you want to ask the next question?
No, because with my glasses, I can't read it.
Oh, okay. Well, this comes from Rich Weiner and Karen Bonheim. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Rich and Karen. How many known instances of using guns successfully for self-defense have there been? I think he put this in when we talked about, you got to keep it in your nightstand because somebody's going to, come in the middle of the night. And what is the ratio between suicides and successful self-defense, or between homicides and successful self-defense? Does that make sense, or do we need some clarification on that?
I need clarification there.
Yeah. Rich, do you want to get on and try to clarify what you were asking?
Oh, yeah, okay. I took a while for me to unmute. Yeah, I mean, for example, for every successful self-defense, when I say ratio, for every successful self-defense using guns, how many suicides are there? Or how many homicides are there? I assume there are many suicides for each successful
10, yeah, 10.
Self-defense.
I don't have that exact number. I don't know if anybody's actually ever done it, but yeah, it's a ridiculously higher number. And there's a John Locke, that's his name, has a lot of misinformation out there to make it look as if the numbers are very different. And a friend of mine actually in Washington, he's been going after John Lott and refuting his numbers really well. He's a scholar on John Lott. But yeah, they're much higher. I don't have those numbers in front of me. I don't even have them, but you could look up what's his name? Devin. Gunvipedia. I'll send that to all you guys. It's but he's the guy who's the expert on John Lott and that very question that you're asking. I'm not.
Who is John Lott?
John Lott is ass with the NRA. The guy's a freaking idiot, and it's just but what he's really good at is putting out misinformation. I'm surprised he didn't work for Donald Trump at this point. He's the king of misinformation. But I'll send that to you. It's called Jivapedia, I think, and it's basically he creates an encyclopedia on gun violence prevention. He is the expert on your very question. I am not, as I said.
Can you say that word again? Gizopedia?
I have to remember. I think it's called Jivapedia. G like encyclopedia but with a G. I will send the link to you guys with all the other information. Let me just write that down.
Okay, and we can send that out to you, Rich, or we can actually do a follow-up and send it to everybody. Okay, so now we have a question from Adam Wasserman. Many police departments and public safety professionals say the threshold for using a gun has been going down. I think I know what he's saying, especially for young people. They're resorting to guns to deal with disagreements and conflicts. Do you see this here in New Mexico and in our communities and schools? So I guess the threshold for using a gun, meaning you're going to use one more readily than you might have in the past.
Janae, do you want to speak to that since it's about students and youth?
I can try to answer it the best that I can.
Sure.
I think New Mexico does have a serious problem with that, especially with young people, first of all, having access to those guns in the first place, and then using those guns to quote unquote resolve conflict. I think we've seen that a lot in the past year with shootings that have happened over conflict that were quote unquote resolved with a gun. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Did I answer it?
No, I think you did, but there's a follow-up question from Greg Corning. And so do you think there's a relationship between that lowered threshold for gun violence and the media portrayal of guns and violent video games, that kind of thing?
I do not think that there's any correlation between the two. I think that gun violence comes from people. I'm trying to find the proper way to word this. Gun violence comes not from any video game or media. It comes from the person wanting to do harm. It comes from them having access to a gun in the first place and wanting to do harm with said gun. No media has any effect on that. There is no factual evidence to support that claim.
I agree with Janae, and if you look at Japan, they play some crazy violent video games. They don't have this problem. It's the access to the firearms. My son, very proud gamer, he wouldn't hurt a fly. And I'm like, Henry, why are you playing that? He's the sweetest kid in the world. He would never hurt a fly. It's just, I think, that the NRA, that was something the NRA really wanted to promote, that gaming communities and gamers and people playing video games and, that kind of violence, that doesn't beget this type of violence, but the access to firearms does. I mean, I asked a group of youth that were in juvenile detention who had, unfortunately, they had all shot and killed somebody. Nicest group of youth, they were so heartbroken as to where they were and what they had done. Most of them were dumb, drug deals for $10. And I asked them, I said, so I was being facetious, of course. I said, how fast, if I wanted to buy a semi-automatic handgun, how fast could you get me one? 30 minutes. And I said, how would you get that gun? And they said Snapchat or Instagram. That's your problem. It's not the video games.
It's the easy access.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about Japan, Miranda, and I'm not sure that I heard this correctly, but I'm pretty sure I did, that the prime minister who was just assassinated in Japan was the only death by gun violence so far in Japan this year.
Oh yeah, they have hardly any, and it was a homemade gun because it's very.
Yeah, it was a
You
ghost
can't
gun.
buy a gun.
Right. Yeah. It was wrapped in like duct tape or something. Okay. So Barbara Bloomberg has a question. Is there a Parkland father asked Biden about an office for gun violence prevention in Washington, D.C. Does that exist? Do you know, Miranda?
Hi, Barbara. I love Barbara. I don't know, but maybe when we do it here, they'll do it in Washington. I don't know if there's anything happening in Washington for it.
But you're not allowed to take a job in Washington, Miranda.
Yeah, you got to stay here. We need you here.
I will never. Having just left Washington, I will not be living there ever.
He actually asked if there was going to be a director in Washington, and Biden, he was interrupting Biden, and of course the Secret Service was all over him.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I forget his name.
It's a Manuel, I think. So that's a sad story. So
Terrible.
He lost his son to Parkland. I mean, what was disappointing about it, and I understand his frustration. I really, really do.
He was angry as hell.
Right. But that was a moment, I was actually there. That was a moment that we were all celebrating the first time we had bipartisan movement, and all the news covered was that moment, and not that we had taken a step forward. And so I felt it was an unfortunate moment. That's my, and I celebrate him and how much he's fighting, because he's right. We do need to do more. But that was unfortunate, because that's all anybody heard. They didn't hear what we actually accomplished.
Okay.
So
to chat questions.
Greg had asked about the 26th, but I think we already covered that, and we'll get information. That's the Courts and Corrections Interim Committee meeting on July 26th. Rich and Karen are asking, how did you get the interim committee to invite the experts from Johns Hopkins? How did you get them to agree to that?
Oh, so because it's our bill, we can invite we can choose our expert witnesses, and it's Gail Tracy's committee. So I just told Gail she was coming. I mean, because it's not, anybody can have, a Republican can have an NRA lobbyist or an NRA expert witness come in. It doesn't, we got Johns Hopkins there because they're our partners in gun violence prevention. So we've been working with them since we've been working with the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence and Josh Horowitz very closely since 2015. They just merged with Johns Hopkins. And so that was the same people we've been working with, but now they're under a different name.
Do you know whether that hearing will be Zoomed so that people
It'll be hybrid. I think you can do both.
Yeah, we'll find out about that, because I know they weren't going to Zoom most of the interim committee hearings, and then they got a lot of flack for that. And so they are starting, I was told by some of the committee secretaries that they will be using Zoom. I mean, some of it depends on, is it here in Santa Fe? Do you know?
It's in Santa Fe, yes. And I can get you, Gail's going to get me the exact time on Friday. So
I was just asking because I know when they're out at a remote location, sometimes they have technology challenges and they can't do it via Zoom. So, but if it's here in Santa Fe, if anybody lives nearby, you can show up and support that.
Will they take public comment?
Probably not. I honestly hope they don't, because it'll take time that we can have to actually have the expert witnesses talk. So, and also if they take public comment, then we get all the naysayers on the other side talking,
Yeah.
reading the Second Amendment 50 times, and then we lose 4 hours. So
What I've
I
noticed,
pray they don't take public comment.
yeah, what I've noticed on a lot of these interim committee hearings, they'll just have like a 30-minute period at the end of the meeting that's set aside for public comment. But yeah, it sounds like you're saying you would prefer that people not comment, and maybe just if they want to go watch, or they want to watch the webcast, or then that's fine.
Well,
And
if they have public comment, then yes, please do comment.
Oh,
That would be important. And if it's in that half hour, I just hope for all of our sake that if they do have it, it's a half hour and it's not those, they never would have everybody speaking during a hearing. You're right. So if it's a half hour, please speak in support.
okay, well, we'll check on that, and we'll let everybody know via an alert and also in the blog. So Janae, if you just jump in anytime, if you have something to say about in response to any of these questions. So Adam Wasserman is asking, why do you pay for guns when you have a buyback?
Because if we say a take back, they're going to say, so now you're taking back our guns. So
no, they say I think he wants to know the amount that you pay for those.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been combating literally 200 of these Facebooks. Like, how can you buy back something you never? So what we do is, that's why I was being sarcastic. So for the gun buybacks, we offer $100 for long guns, revolvers, or pistols. $200 for semi-automatic handguns and semi-automatic rifles, and $250 for assault weapons, which is basically your AR-15s and your AK-47s. We do not give cash because we don't want somebody to go and buy another gun after they turn into 3 hunting rifles. Not that that's usually our clientele anyway, according to our anonymous survey. And they get, we're doing Amazon, Walmart. I know I'm not crazy about Walmart, but it's where a lot of people, it's where they shop. They're not great with unions. Target, Smith's, and Brewer's Gas. And you
give like gift cards?
Yeah, you can mix and match your cards. So if you bring in semi-automatic handguns, you can mix and match. We'll have you out of there hopefully in 3 minutes. It goes very fast. If you do show up, keep your gun in your trunk, preferably unloaded, but we'll make sure they're unloaded for you. You never even get out of your car. We ask while we're getting the cards, you fill out an anonymous survey and you go your own way, and you go to Target and buy some new beach towels since we're so landlocked here.
Yeah. So here's a question from Nicole Finch. How is the gun buyback anonymous if the police are running them through NCIC?
So that's a good question. So NCIC runs the serial number, but we don't have registration of guns in New Mexico. So the only type of gun that's going to pop up as questionable is a stolen gun. And that's only if that previous owner called and said my gun was stolen. And so that would be a name that they would then go and call. Your name isn't. We have not a lot. We've taken in 7 stolen guns, and the poor people, they're so terrified. They have no idea it's stolen. They've had it for 10 years and they still get their gift card and they go on their way, no questions asked. If it's an evidence gun, those would go into evidence storage, right? We've never taken in a crime gun because no criminal is going to go shoot someone and then go, hey, I need a Smith's grocery card, right? And let me go hand it to the police. I mean,
unless they're really, really dumb.
I mean, that would be so dumb. So it is 100% anonymous. It's just the serial. When you run a serial number, a name does not pop up.
So you're saying if you do find a gun that was reported stolen, then you contact that owner and you would give the gun back to them, I guess, if they want it.
Yes.
Right?
So police would do that. And we're always so relieved because a lot of people say, well, people are going to steal guns to get the gift cards. As of now, I think we've taken 7 stolen guns. I know that this is my life right now on Facebook. It's trying to shut these people up. The 7 guns that we've taken in were all stolen in 2008, 2010, so long ago. They probably won't even be able to find the owner. But none of them have been recent. But they do try to find the owner because that's the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And here's a question from Jeff Selesky. are ghost guns any significant problem in New Mexico now, or perhaps in the future?
That's a really good question, and I feel like they're going to be a problem everywhere. We were actually looking at potentially going after a ghost gun ban, and it's not the printed ones that everybody's talking about, it's these kits. So for $600 online, I can go order a kit tonight, no questions asked, and build my own AR-15. And they are very easy to build. I can spend $300 and have a kit brought to me. All I need is a screwdriver and a hammer or whatever, and build my own semi-automatic handgun. I was actually going to do it and videotape it just to show people, if I can do this. Now I can operate a chop saw to chop up the guns, but I'm not very handy with tools, I'm gonna be honest. If I can do it, that's a problem. Then I would obviously immediately dismantle it with a chop saw. But it's a real issue, and it's not. People think it's these 3D printers. Those are actually, they're going to be a problem. We saw that, and Janae, you remember this at the high school,
Yes.
at West Mesa. That's cost $1,600. Those are much more expensive and harder to do. But it's these kits that are a problem. Do you want to speak to that, Janae? The one, was it West Mesa High School?
Yes, I believe so. It was West Mesa High School, where the shooter had a 3D printed gun that was used.
And he was 16. He had bought it online.
Yes, it was bought online.
I don't even understand the concept of how you can do that.
And as Ms. Miranda has said, these guns are incredibly easy to make, to get your hands on. Quite literally, anyone can buy one, anyone can get one, anyone can make one. They're very simple to get. It's honestly amazing. But by definition, ghost guns are untraceable. They're bad. They're most cases being used for criminal activity. It's not something that we want in our communities or something that we want to encourage use of.
And they're plastic, right? They're not metal, so they can't be detected through a metal detector.
There's one part that is metal, but the rest isn't. And what, as Janae said, there's no serial number, so it's a great gun for a crime.
Huh. Okay.
So I think it's a Pandora's box has been opened and the ship has sailed, and I don't even know how we rein this one in.
Yeah, that's crazy. So Greg Corning is asking, are you aware of any nations in which private gun ownership is legal and yet gun violence is low?
I think Switzerland for some reason, but I'm not sure. I know like so for instance, Japan has really strict laws. Canada has really strict laws and has a lot of gun ownership, but I think they have registration. I'd have to look more into that.
Okay. And then Michelle Meters, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. What happened to the kid who showed up at a school with a gun and hollow point bullets and they said he wasn't a threat? I don't know what she's talking about. Do you, Miranda or Janae?
Where was that?
I don't know. Michelle, did you want to clarify if you're still on?
It was a couple of months ago in Albuquerque. And he showed up with them and they tried to put him in a vehicle and he got out and really wanted to go in that school and shoot somebody. And he didn't. But then they said, no, it's not really an low risk. He's low risk. He says low risk. And it looked like nothing happened to him. And we thought, what's going on here? Yeah, it was in Albuquerque.
Yeah, that student was not arrested.
Yeah, he wasn't arrested. And it made you wonder, who is he connected to? What's going on here?
Hey, you want to take that one?
Does anybody remember? It dropped for
yeah, that was a really annoying case. He had this handgun on him with these hollow point bullets. He was trying to get into the school with the intention of shooting students there, and was not arrested, was not in any trouble, it seems, at all. They quite literally just let him go. I don't even think that they took the gun from him.
It's hard to understand. I wonder what the story is behind that. I guess we don't know.
Well, I think there's an issue with APS not, and Janae, correct me if I'm wrong, what your opinion on this is, not following through on gun threats. A lot of racist gun threats. So at
Yes. Mm-hmm.
which school was it? Was it with the kid had the student had been making horrible racist comments about black students, and then finally one day came into the school and what did do you remember, Janae? What was it he put on Snapchat? I'm going to shoot all the black kids at the school, and terrified, absolutely terrified those students and those families. And APS did nothing. And we said to them over and over, you need to do an extremist protection order on those parents to make sure they don't have a firearm. And if they do that, they can't keep that firearm. I mean, I don't know. Janae, what's your opinion? I just feel like APS keeps failing our students when it comes to these threats that are probably happening more often than we know.
I am really sad to say that cases like that happen a lot in Albuquerque, and they're not taken seriously by schools or by the police at all.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just played off as like, quote unquote, students playing a prank, quote unquote, students not just joking around, quote unquote, students just having quote unquote fun. Those are real quotes by schools when parents have asked them why the situation was not handled correctly. Usually when a threat is being made, the school shuts down. There is an email sent out to parents telling them that their students should not be going to school the following day so that they can address the situation. None of that happens when any of these threats happen via Snapchat, Instagram, or however else the threat is being made.
Well, that would be a good question for Raul Torres, who's still Bernalillo County District Attorney. I mean, I know he's very much and will be the Attorney General of the state come January. Yeah. But
I had a question for Miranda.
Okay.
I actually have a question for Janae. Janae, have you ever read the policy, the APS school policy? If not, we should look at that and see what their policy even is. Do they even have a policy?
APS policy on that is that you have to email every single parent or call every single parent to let them know that their students should not be coming to school the next day until the situation is handled and that there is 100% proof that there is no threat to the school or the students. That is in their policy.
We need to organize students to start going to those board meetings to say you need to uphold your policy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, we got to shine some light on that. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, Paul, but I got mad.
You're allowed to get mad if you'll answer this question. Is there, there have been enough of these school shootings in the last 10 years. Has there been any kind of psychological profiling done of the kind of person that would do that? It's so beyond, normal psychological understanding of, just of motivation and stuff. What is there any common thread to what drives these people? And I'm not just thinking of schools.
They're usually really silent, quiet, and people are surprised that they would ever do anything like that. I'm being sarcastic because that's all you ever hear. It's always the same. Why are we we're stigmatizing people who are introverts every time there's a mass shooting? I think it's obviously mental illness. Nobody's going to do that who isn't suffering from severe mental illness and a need for attention. But one thing we really try to do now, whenever these school shootings happen, we won't post any social media article that mentions the name, because there's a heroizing element that happens with these mass shootings. Janae, do you have anything to say to that?
I would like to point out that there is a correlation between these shooters being around violence in their life, not necessarily mental illness, but just being around violence themselves, which is a part of it. And then I'm sorry, Miranda, can you repeat what you said?
Oh, then when it happens, it's always the person seems so quiet and, alone, and, we didn't really.
We had no idea he would do something like that. Yeah.
And then they're kind of stigmatizing people who are introverts, and I'm an introvert, so I take, you know.
Yeah, it's a generalization of people with mental illness when I don't think that's a fair assumption to be made. Not everyone with a mental illness is going to be violent. Not everyone with a mental illness is going to commit these violent acts. And I don't think that's fair to be put on these people.
Right.
I think that a lot of it has to be done with us as people just wanting to justify what is being happened, what's happening in our society, when the answer is really just these people have grown up around violence and that's what they know.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there've always
that's a good point on the on the mental illness.
Yeah.
So whenever a mass shooting happens, when I said they're obviously suffering from mental illness, I do think they are, but what Janae is saying is 100% true, that what happens is we start focusing on people who are suffering from mental illness, and the majority of people suffering from mental illness are not going to do these heinous crimes, and we're stigmatizing people with mental illness. And that's exactly what the NRA wants to do. They want to scream squirrel and look at mental illness and not the fact that there's violence that these people have grown up with, and they're surrounded by accessibility to basically war tools.
Yes, thank you for clearing that up for me.
Yeah, and there've always
been cleared it up for me, so I was making sure I was saying the right thing.
There have always been troubled people and angry people, and you know that's nothing new in our society. It's just now it's so easy to get a gun. You know, back in the old days, if all you could get was a knife, I mean, you couldn't go and kill, 19 people with a knife before somebody stopped you. So it really, like they're always saying, oh, it's, mental health treatment. It's not about the guns, but of course it's about the guns.
Meg, you had a question. We've been ignoring you.
No, she hasn't been up there that long.
Go ahead, Meg Meltz.
Wait, you're muted.
You're muted, Meg.
I haven't been on one of these calls in a long time. I was just at a lecture, and more than a lecture, a workshop with a Black man who works with deeply troubled kids who just keep getting into trouble, young Black males. And he done this for years. And then just like a year ago, he reached out and took one of these kids' hands, and he got such a powerful reaction that he suddenly was like, he asked the kid, when were you last touched? And it turned out the last time somebody held this child in love was when he was 3 years old, and his grandmother hugged him. And the speaker said he realized at that moment that these people are undertouched. They are suffering a horrible deficit because no one lovingly just touches them. And that just strikes me so powerfully for these young guys who are just not getting any of their needs met, touch being a really high need.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and we just can't keep making these guns accessible to anyone and everyone. We're going to have to wrap it up. It's almost 7:30. Janae and Miranda, did you have any closing comments or anything you want to tell us?
None for me.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here, Miranda.
I want to thank Janae for being here and how important it is to have our youth speaking, because the wisdom that our youth have, and their voice, in my opinion, is the most important voice in the room. And so I want to thank Janae for her passion, intelligence, wisdom, and willing to speak to a bunch of strangers.
Thank you.
Yeah, we
strangers.
We really appreciate it.
Tomorrow on KUNM Live.
So I also want to thank both of you, Janae and Miranda, for being here. I think it was we saw a number of comments in the chat about how good this presentation was and how helpful it was.
And how much people have learned, yeah.
And we've recorded it, so we'll make it available to those who couldn't make it today.
We'll put it up on the website.
And thank you both. I also want to, in closing, want to remind you that on Wednesday, July 27th, from 6 to 7:30, we'll be hosting another Zoominar This one focused on modernization of the legislature.
Which we mentioned at the beginning.
So if you are interested in that, just go to retakeourdemocracy.org, click in the banner on the homepage over actions and events, and scroll down and you'll find information for registering. You have to register to participate.
So thank you again, Janae and Miranda. We really appreciate you being here. And we will, whenever you have information to pass on to us, Miranda, we'll make sure we distribute it as widely as possible.
And if you could do that like soon, because what we want to do is based on today's discussion, we want to follow up in blogs and alerts with a public education call to write to friends, legislators, and in the media.
For letters to the editor, right?
Letters to the editor and writing to friends and family members. We're trying to kind of transform our Retake people into messengers. Mm-hmm. And that was Roxanne's idea, and I like it. So that's one way to magnify our voice.
Right. So thank you everyone for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Hope to see you on the 27th.
In
Thanks,
the
Miranda.
meantime,
Thanks, Janae.
Take care.
Do something to help
Thank you.
Michelle get elected.
Yeah,
yeah,
from
right.
Michelle Van Grisham.
Bye, Barbara Bloomberg.
Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night. Take care.